Welcome to the St. Francis Youth Podcast. Welcome back to the St. Francis Youth Podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 2, and this month I got to sit down and I had a great time with my friend Jason Gardner, talking a little bit about a book that he wrote 10 years ago called Mend the Gap. Can the Church Reconnect the Generations? Jason is currently a vicar, and him and Rachel and the family are about to be moving up to Blackburn Diocese to be church planting there, which is super exciting. But for about 20 years, he's been a youth worker and is passionate about seeing young people not only going to youth group, although he loves that, and I love that, but he's also really passionate about seeing young people as part of and part of the heart and the life of the church, this intergenerational, messy family. And as St. Francis, we just want you guys to know that we miss you, that we love you, and we can't wait to be spending time with you again as that sort of generational family. Here is the interview I had with Jason Gardner. I hope you really find it helpful. Well, Jason, thank you for coming on to our little podcast. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, you're very, very, very welcome, Paul. Always a pleasure.
We love to quiz our guests with the usual icebreakers, if that's all right. So let's dive in. Our favourite question to ask tends to be your favourite way to eat potato.
Oh, my favourite type of potato, favourite way to eat it. Oh my goodness, you got me there. You got me there. I mean, if I ever go to what I could eat a mountain of is like roast potatoes done in goose fat. You know, a Christmas special. The Christmas special of my favourite potato, but I do like the posh. Like I've tried to do potato duffwinners or potato gratin. You know, those are good as well. You get cheese and cream in a mix. It's all good. But I'm a classic roast potato man. You know, that's always the go-to. See, as a kid, it's like give me more roast potatoes.
Good.
I love them all. I love them all though. Jackets, mash. Wow. Yeah, I'm a big potato fan.
Yeah, that's coming through. Okay, I know you're a fellow movie buff, so this one might be quite hard, but 3 movies that are in your top 10.
3 movies in my top 10, that is relatively easy. I always stick in Blade Runner. I love a film, Blade Runner. And I also love some of the big boys, you know, like Empire Strikes Back is my favourite Star Wars film, and Lord of the Rings. It'd be Lord of the Rings. It probably would be Return of the King. Lord of the Rings, but all the trilogy, you know. So I love the big ones. I love there'd be a lot more in there. Top 10, some classic films. There's a film called Apocalypse Now, which is a Vietnam film in the 70s, and that's a classy film. That was a bit of a game changer for me when I watched that film. So yeah, they're up there. They're up there.
It's good. So it's good. Wow, we shared 2 of the same: Return of the King and Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. Hard to beat.
Some of the best films. It's true.
Definitely.
Favorite pizza topping.
Favorite pizza topping. I'm if I'm going to the name of that pizza company that begins with D, I'll probably go for the Meteor.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Meteor, which is always like a Full House or Mighty Meteor. Although that same company do like a hot and spicy one. I can't remember what they quite call it. I'm quite a fan of that as well. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So, or the simple one, ham and pineapple Hawaiian.
Oh, Jason, no, you just ruined it. Okay, no judgment. Sorry.
People don't like pineapple on a pizza. Why not?
Oh, it's nice. No.
Nice and
Divine.
juicy.
It's the Brexit of pizzas.
Pork and pineapple, they go well together.
DC or Marvel?
Marvel.
Yeah,
I love a bit of DC. Like I like a bit of Batman and a bit of Green Lantern, but I'm mainly a Marvel boy. I do have a collection of about 60 graphic novels, and it's like 3/4 of it's Marvel.
Good work. Okay, we're nearly there. And this links in, if you could have one superpower, what would you go for?
Ooh. You know, it's a simple one. It's Mr. Incredible. It's like super strength. If you're going to go for one, super strength, you know. What's the point of having invulnerability if it's like you haven't got super strength? You know, what's the point of flying if you haven't got super strength? You know, you're gonna fly into stuff, you're gonna die. You know, it's like super strength.
It's good.
Yeah. I mean, the Flash is pretty good, but even at the Flash, you know, if you haven't got super strength, then it's difficult to manage stuff at like at hyper speed. You know,
It's
you've got to
good.
be able to, again, if you run into something. So super strength.
Oh, amazing. Okay, last question, because you've got a couple of little ones. What is your best kids' TV?
Best kids TV. My kids or mine from my back?
Oh, to watch with your kids now.
To watch with your kids. I'll sing you the theme tune. It's like Thomas is 3 years old, and before he goes to bed, he has to watch one of his episodes. It's Abney and Teal.
Oh,
Abney and Teal. They live on a park in the island, and the theme tune is Abney and Teal. How does it feel to live on a park in the island? Something like that. It's just right for us. That's adventurous, and it's home from home on our island. So we're kind of crazy, like little cloth, a girl and this kind of creature boy. We have adventures, you know, on the island,
amazing.
in the middle of a park, in the middle of a city. So Abney and Teal, the Adventures of Abney and Teal.
We'll be looking that up, and thank you for a live performance as well. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That was good. Amazing. Jason, thank you again so much for coming on. You, in 2008, wrote this book. I've got it right here, Mend the Gap. I really love this as a book, and we'll go into it a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about why you wrote it? What was going on at the time? What was stirring in you?
Right. Well, I was working for the London Institute for Contemporary Christianity, which is a Christian think tank, looks at a lot of contemporary issues from a biblical point of view. And my big thing was really wanting to look at youth culture in society, the history of youth culture, and the church's response to it, and saying, was it right? And so I did a lot of work in that book at tracing the history of the emergence of youth culture through the 20th century, looked at how the church had responded and saying, is that going to cut the mustard? Is that going to really connect with young people? And so it was born out of that. That's why I started looking at it. So it was looking at, are we engaging well with young people in the church? Are we engaging well with young people outside of a church? And so I was really dealing with that and coming up with, there seems to be something missing around how we're connecting across the generations as well. Yeah. So it was looking at what I saw was a blind spot in the church, which is you can have fantastic youth workers, but they can be a little bit islanded, which is a common response in terms of church culture. So one of the like filtered down learnings was essentially that you can have great youth work, you can have great youth culture, but for some churches it's an add-on, and that means it gives them an excuse not to change the core culture of church. Now, I personally think that's why we are where we are in terms of church not connecting well with young people, keeping hold of young people, because they said, oh, great, wonderful, we've got our kids worker, we've got our youth worker, they can do this siloed, streamed off response to that and really engage young people and children, but then we expect them like age 18 or whatever it is to transition into, I'm doing inverted commas now, but into the adult church, and suddenly think, oh great, so I've been part of something which is engaging, dynamic, has really empowered me, and now I'm expected to be pew fodder and sit up and stand down at the right times, and stand up and sit down at the right times, and it's just not engaging with me. And so the church goes, oh well, why aren't they connecting with what we're doing? And it's because, you know, they haven't shifted their core culture to engage with emerging generations, haven't taken on board the massive shifts in culture, and have just been doing it in the same old way and expecting it to reach and connect and disciple young people. And by and large, it's not.
That's so helpful. So instead of one church, we've kind of created like a little side project, haven't we, which we call youth work, and we have youth group in that. And therefore the jump from youth group to the main church can be really difficult for a lot of young people, which leads me on to my next question, which is many young people will really love those youth activities, and that's a really important part of their sort of faith and their discipleship. So why would we want them to be part of that
other thing that we call church that's intergenerational and messy, and why would we want them to make that leap to be part of the whole church?
I it's because it's hugely enriching for all of us involved in church. One of the pictures that I picked up from the Bible was, the Bible's got a very different culture and a different approach, and so in one sense we've got to challenge culture and say, look, there's this rich environment within the Bible of families learning and being discipled together, and that was part of their experience. So they grow up together, and there's a path there which is about empowering and bringing people up in the faith, and you've got this great dialogue between young and old, and so that the discipleship happens in a mix of that. And one of the beautiful pictures of that is from Joel chapter 4, I believe it is. But Peter quotes it in Acts 2 when he's at the day of Pentecost, and says, God says, "I'll pour out my spirit on all people, on young and old, and men and women." So it's like this picture. To get a complete picture of what it means to be church, you need everybody, and it's everybody on board. And it's become a bit of a cliche. Church is family on a mission, but I genuinely believe that it is family on a mission, doing this together. And I think we've lost a lot of young people because we haven't painted out what that mission is. And if a mission looks like, again, coming and sitting in a pew or a comfy seat on a Sunday, standing up, singing a few songs, and then sitting down and listening to someone warble on about their latest greatest thought about the Bible, and that's not a captivating picture of what the mission of God is. And I think that's why we lose a lot of young people, where it's so much more. So I think of, I just thought of it then. I don't know if you've seen the latest version of Lost in Space on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's like this old school sci-fi that they've reborn. And so it's like really good. But that's like, all this family, they're going out in space to be settlers on a new planet. So all the family are equipped and trained to do what we do when we land. And I think that's great. That's it. Family on a mission. That's what the church needs to be. But we've kind of lost that because we've got a very passive approach to discipleship. So we need to recover that. So that's why I wouldn't want young people to say, oh yeah, I need to be part of that thing where everybody sits around on a Sunday and sits around in groups and talks about the Bible and doesn't do anything about it. It's where we go out onto the streets, tell people about Jesus, do amazing acts in the local community that reveal just how much God loves people. I want to be part of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's not so much that we're asking young people to jump from this youth group thing into this current, church setting, but actually want them to help mold and shape and transform what that whole church, that whole family looks like. Yeah, that's really exciting. So, okay, really practically then, what ways would you love to see the church better embracing young people? I know you've touched on that a little bit, but just to pick your brains a bit more.
Well, I think I do think it's creating opportunities to do all the elements of church which are really important around making and growing disciples, but doing that more together. So whether it's teaching and wrestling with the big issues that being a Christian, that stuff arises anyway in terms of your growth, but also when it connects with our culture, which just does not support the Christian story anymore. And so saying, well, actually, we need to go together in this. So, we're launching a church in Blackburn, and we're going to be creating teaching streams which aren't just like a service. It's just like you'll come for an hour on a Sunday evening, you'll come for an hour on a Wednesday night to get some really good in-depth teaching, but we're wrestling with the big issues where it's, what does the Bible think about suffering? Why does God allow suffering? What does the Bible have to say about sexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality, all the big topics of the day, and thinking, okay, but why does that have to be, oh yeah, the teenagers really need this? I want all my adults to say, well, you're going to have to answer questions from your young people about this, your children about this, so come and wrestle with us on this stuff and learn. So learning together, doing mission together. I love it when you can get adults out on the streets telling people about the good news of Jesus, whatever that looks like, whether it's an invite to Alpha, because I think that just says something. And just our little stuff like we're doing in the previous church I was in Harrow is great, because you had took the adults out onto the streets once a month on a Sunday, and eventually you'd end up their kids were coming out, the 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds were coming out as well and saying, oh, we want to be part of this. And it's like brilliant, so all that sort of stuff, and getting involved in compassionate acts, social action, I think you when you can do that stuff together and learn well together, why can't there be a family approach to that? So it's looking at how you engage right across the ages. So it's not just these gateways when you turn 11 and you start going to high school, or you're 18, but for all the way along you're engaging in activities. So it's a bit of a mixed approach. So it's like there's an approach where we want every ministry within the church to speak to young people, and we want them to be involved in every ministry. So, we're teaching young people and they're teaching us and they're involved in that ministry. But there's also those separate times where you want to say, well, actually, for this, we do want young people to be part of their own group, chat amongst the peers about what this means, and we'll train them up to do that stuff. So it's a bit of a mix of approach, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic. There's some really practical things there that is so helpful. And yeah, just to pick up on that last point, you talked about how it's not just what the church does for young people, but actually what the young people can offer the church as well is incredible. And I wonder if you've got any thoughts on ways that young people could influence and change the culture of the church. So if they look at this sort of church thing and say, oh, I really want to be part of that, actually, what are some of the ways what some of the things they can do to help shape and mold that gathering?
Well, I think there's conversations to be had within church leadership around how you invite young people into those meaningful spaces where you discuss, like, I think if I remember rightly, the youngest person you can have on a PCC is 16, or is it 18? But anyway, having representatives, so they're speaking to power, and they're saying what they think about issues at the highest level of church. That's one good way for them to be involved. But it's often about being invited into those spaces. So you need a kind of core shift in the way that churches are led, that say, we want to invite, we need this. We want young people to be speaking into these areas, whether it's simple stuff like I've done tag team preaching in the past, where you've got guys who are 16, so they come up and have a crack at preaching with me, and things like that. But as soon as you start to do those things which send a different signal out and says to young people, we want you to be enabled and empowered in order that you might grow as a disciple, then I think you're permission giving to young people to be involved in the rest of the church. So influencing up is often, it's difficult without an invite, but it's having a conversation with church leaders. Says, well, how can we get involved? And young people saying, I want to do what you're doing. Going up to, we've done I've experimented with like a simple little apprentice Sundays in the past, where young people have shadowed someone in their role on a Sunday. So, well, they can do that. They shadowed you for a bit. Let them do it. So it's looking at different ways and not putting a label on, oh, you got to wait until you're a certain age to be able to do that. So give them there's certain areas where it just doesn't matter if they have a go and it's a bit of a mess. Who cares? There's some areas where you really want to train them up, so they can do it really well. But other areas where you think, well, let's give them a go and see what happens.
I really love that. And it's a slightly messier version of church, isn't it? It's a bit of, sometimes things will go wrong, and that's okay. We're family and we're on this together and we're working it out. And but what I love in that is that people, including young people, feel very empowered and part of this mission that we're doing as a family. And yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I remember stat don't quote me on this, don't Google it later. I think the average age of the people who signed, it was going to be mainly blokes, wasn't it, who signed the American Declaration of Independence was 19 or something like that. It was like,
Wow.
and in the past, we've kind of like, it's partly because of our education system takes so long. We think, oh, yeah, you're not complete. You can't get stuck into this until you're this age. But it hasn't been a way in the past. You start apprenticeships back in the old day. If you're going to be like a stonemason working with stone on a cathedral, you might start when you're like 7 years old. Something like that. So we've had that in the past, and it's like, well, why do we have to wait to do this stuff? You don't. You learn by doing. We've got, again, you've got to turn around our education models, which is like, once you've done the curriculum, once you've gone through the module, once you've got the GCSE or the AS or A level, then you're qualified to be able to do this. And it's like, well, most stuff in the past you've always learned on the job, and clearly Jesus taught that way.
Yeah.
So yeah. Why not? And I'm excited. We got like an intern year. We got a gap year out at Preston Minster and just we have 5 guys on that, and just taking them out on the streets. It's just brilliant. You know, we'll go and sit in a you know, around a table at a coffee house, and then say, right, we're just going out. I'll take one of you out for 10 minutes. Let's go and let's just tell one person the good news of Jesus, or ask them 3 big questions about what they believe. And it's just been brilliant to see those guys stretch in that way and grow. So it's why do we have to wait to do some of this stuff?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I love about your book is, as well as painting this sort of intergenerational vision of church, it also seems it's a vision of raising the bar of discipleship. That it's a discipleship that is not necessarily easy and cheap, but actually quite costly and hard work, but rewarding at the same time. And I love you quote David Wilson, and you say teenagers are being taught nuclear physics at school and gentle Jesus, meek and mild on a Sunday. And that quote's really stuck with me.
It's still a great quote, isn't it?
It's good, isn't it? I love that. And so, I mean, what are some of the practical ways that young people can, you know, raise the bar and really step out into this adventure that you paint?
Well, some of the, I would say, don't settle for a picture of faith, a picture of a mission of God that leaves you sat on your bum most of the time. You know, do the stuff, and you don't have to wait. And it might be a bit cheeky, but if you're waiting for an adult to give you permission to do stuff that you think's lined up with the mission of God, don't. You know, look around at your school, look around at your area, and think, where can I make a difference? And actually say, who's gonna teach me how to share my faith? I'm nervous about it. I'm a bit fearful about getting out there and telling people about Jesus, but I see clearly that's something that happened right the way through the New Testament, throughout church history. So, you know, how do I begin to do that? What does that look like? You know, and so it's having the will and saying, I want to step up, and I want to raise a bar on myself first, and ask and begin by praying and say, God, you know, give me those opportunities. Pray bold prayers. Give God an inch of faith, an inch of courage, and I'll give you a mile of faith. You know, just sort of say, I want to step out and do this. So help me in this. That's an interesting. That going back to that quote though, I kind of also think, you know, we've silenced far too many adults in the church, and it's like, you know, it's like this guy who was with on a team this morning is in the 3rd year of studying police, but then I know a guy who's retired from the police, and like connecting him up and saying, oh, why don't you go and have a chat and conversation and learn from each other? So it's like doing the simple things. So you want to be a nuclear physicist? Is there a nuclear physicist or a great scientist in your church? Then, you know, go and talk to them, and getting those guys involved as well. So oh, nobody's interested in what I do Monday through Friday. And actually, well, all these young people are wanting their career of some sort. So why not bring them in and say, what does it mean? You know, last church I was at, it was like planet brain virologists, you know, who, because they're at last church, I mean, I was to chat to them about COVID, but it'd be like, whoa, bring those guys on board to chat to a youth group and say, what, you know, to explain this stuff to us. How is this happening? How's this crisis come about? You know, it's getting people involved in real life as well, and getting role models. And I think, you know, as well as setting our young people free, we need to set our adults free as well, and say, you've got so much to give, and don't think it's like this narrow bit of faith that you got to talk about. You know, people want to hear about real life.
Yeah, love that. Thank you, Jason. I've got one more question, and obviously the book was written in 2008. If you were to publish a 15th anniversary version, is there anything you would change now, or is there an additional chapter that you would want to write to encourage young people sort of 15 years on?
Yeah, I think I might be a bit hard. I might be a bit hard
that question.
I might be a bit hard hitting, Paul. And I think it was a chapter I'd want to sort of say about. I kind of pulled off the. I kind of softened the blow a little bit around. I think a lot of churches are struggling. Like a lot of research, a lot of churches struggled with young people still connecting with church during COVID. But they're not knowing how to do it. And I do see it's as a result of, you know, we gave away the goods in terms of, it's amazing. And there are many brilliant youth workers like yourself, Paul, who actually think about the whole church and like try to influence the rest of the church. Like, come on, it's not just me on my own doing this. We've got to engage our young people and get them involved in the rest of the life of the church. But a lot of them have been happy to sort of say, great, you do that over there, and as a result of that, we are where we're at, and so it's recovering that. So I think I'd write a bit more into that and just nailing it and saying, unless we do something about this, unless we change the way we disciple young people, unless we get parents on board, unless we get all the people in the church on board and engage with this, and we're always going to be saying, this is for the professionals, this is for the people who really know what they're doing, it's not for us. And I think that's where we're at, and so we're having to do that stuff now and have to rebuild in and train church leaders. Here's what youth ministry might look like. I'm saying, but I've got no young people, I've got no kids in my church. They say, well, you still got to really think about it, otherwise there's just no future for what we're about. So I probably like I have a harder hitting edge to it, as well.
Jason, that's been great. Thank you so much. I said I was only going to ask you one more, but I'm going to sneak in a personal
of course.
one.
Is it about Star Wars, Paul?
It's not Star Wars. I'll have a think about that in a moment. But how can we be praying for you guys at the moment? I know you've got an exciting move coming up. Can you tell us a bit about that and how we can be praying for you?
So we're God willing, everything goes according to plan. We're going to move to a church called St. Luke's in Blackburn, and it's going to become a resourcing church, really focused on reaching young people, discipling them really well. And we're really interested in the guys who know nothing about faith and Christianity, don't see it as important in their lives, might be interested in spirituality at some level, but really reaching, connecting with them and discipling them. So we're bringing the team together for that. It's really exciting. So do pray for God's favor and protection over that as we move. We just feel that kind of resistance. It's something that the devil, God's enemies don't want to happen. We feel that push. So do pray for God's protection and over us as we make that move. That'd be wonderful.
Fantastic. We definitely will be. Thank you again so much.